How do I get started? How do I get motivated? That was a real question that I received from one of these young leaders that I was mentoring, or am mentoring, I should say. And it is a legitimate question. And there was a lot of frustration in this individual because they were really facing an uphill climb and some adversity in their own leadership and decision-making process. You know, we were talking about things like motivation and habits and how do I change things. Let me start by saying this: nothing changes until something changes. You know, many times we have great intentions. Maybe we even think we're motivated, we're ready for change, but the fact of the matter is, until something changes, nothing is going to change. And what I said to him was, well, what is the root of the problem? You know, many times people are dealing with or wanting to address symptoms, wanting to address things that really are not going to bring about change, because the fruit is always in the root. You have to really be looking at what is the cause of the problem. Otherwise, you're just constantly dealing with outcomes, and you're constantly dealing with possible issues, but in reality, you're not really getting to the root of the matter. What is the root of the issue? Is it time management? Is it poor organization? Is it downright laziness? You know, sometimes we have to take a hard look in the mirror to ask ourselves, what is holding us back? That being said, we dealt with the root of the issue. Now we know what we are dealing with. And by the way, that provided some insight that some changes, hard decisions needed to be made. Otherwise, nothing was going to change. And they were personal. They were probably going to impact other people and relationships. And I just had to say it straight. If you don't change this and put some boundaries around your time, because the time issue wasn't really a time issue, it was a relationship issue. And unless that was going to be managed somehow, nothing was going to change. The question about motivation is interesting. People are always looking for how to get motivated and how to get inspired, and kind of looking for an inner button or trigger that is within them, that somehow they're going to wake up one day and go, hey, this is it. I'm a new person. Yeah, that button really doesn't exist, to be honest with you. I really believe consistency is key. If you're consistent, what gets scheduled happens. Let's be honest, there's going to be days you're not going to be motivated. You're not going to be inspired. You want to just, hey, I'm going to stay in bed and sleep for another 3 hours, or avoid the decisions I have to make or the things that I have to face. But if it is scheduled, if it is consistent, if it is systematic within what you're doing, then you just get it done. It's about consistency. And I don't have to rely on motivation and inspiration and really living out of my emotions and my feelings, particularly if you're a high emotional person. You know, the days you feel it, boy, you're just up and running high. And then other days, you just don't. You know, from the sports world, I always like to bring out analogies from there. You know, sometimes they say, you know, the legs just weren't in it today. You know, just wasn't feeling the legs. Well, does that mean you don't play? Does that mean you don't come off the bench? Do you say to the coach, yeah, the legs just aren't feeling it? Or do you go out there, you do your best with the energy that you have, because that's your job, that's your responsibility, you're consistent. I really believe that's the key. Another thing we talked about was accountability. Who's putting your feet to the fire? If you are not going to be consistent and you're not an individual that's highly motivated, then what have you put around you to keep you accountable? If you're your own accountability coach, yeah, it's probably not going to work. Again, unless you are highly, highly motivated and you're I'm going to get it done type of person, then you need to put people around you or systems around you that are going to keep you accountable when you miss a deadline, when you miss a meeting, when you miss an appointment. Is there any outcome? Is there any responsibility? Or do you just go, oh, well, I'll get it next time, and the next time happens, and all of a sudden we begin to build patterns and cycles. And by the way, accountability, consistency, the things that we are talking about is really about breaking the patterns and the cycles that now you live by. We call those bad habits. Bad habits actually create patterns and cycles that are very, very difficult to break. So those are some key things that I had mentioned to him. I also would also recommend a couple of books you've heard me talk about before, Atomic Habits and Eat That Frog. I believe those are tremendous books as far as creating good habits and then making hard decisions in the morning when we are the freshest. My friends, listen, most people know what they need to do. They don't have, quote unquote, that motivation to get it done. Forget it, throw it out. Schedule it, get consistent, create accountability that will produce discipline in your life. And then you're going to start to create positive patterns and cycles, which leads to momentum, and momentum is contagious. Once momentum begins to happen and you begin to see the fruit of some of those decisions that you make, that actually adds to your motivation, if you will, because now you're seeing results. And when you see results, don't sabotage yourself. Don't go back to the old ways. Resist that. That's just going to destroy you. How do you get started? Get started today. Take some action. Find some resources. Find some accountability partners. Put things in your leadership that are going to create the right and positive trajectory.